games were a pretty critical part of my survival for 2020. Everyone says it's so hard to stay inside all the time, but with games like what I played last year, I probably saw the sun, a total of 5 times, which kind of a depressing stat. In all seriousness, it seemed like there's a lot of controversies for games last year, which I can't wrap my head around. Maybe I was just more appreciative of a lot of the games that we were getting because it did help me so much, but I thought we had a lot of good stuff in 2020. A few games that I didn't get a chance to play last year, but honestly probably would have made it, are Half-Life Alyx, which I just don't got that PC set up with the VR. I mean, I wish I could play it. Yakuza Like a Dragon, Crash 4, Persona 5 Royal, which I've played Persona 5 Vanilla, I just never got a chance to play Royal, and even then, I'm not sure if that would fit as a brand new game for this year. And lastly, the PlayStation exclusive Dreams, which is the game made by Media Molecule, where you kind of create your own game within the game. It seems super amazing, super interesting, but just haven't had a chance to pick it up. A few honorable mentions of games that just missed the list. Animal Crossing. I know Animal Crossing is an amazing game and everything. I bought it day one, but I'll be honest, probably my girlfriend's favorite game of the year. I gave it to her, let her play it for months, and I just never even touched it. I was a backseat gamer with some of this, and yeah, it looks fun, but I can't rank it if it's not a game I've really played. The PS5 remake of Demon's Souls, which is pretty phenomenal. I suck at these games, and I just really haven't gone far enough in it, and even then it's a remake, so it feels kind of weird to like put it on a top 10 list for this year. And lastly, Among Us and Fall Guys. I know it's memed, I know it's overrated, I know it's everywhere, but the thing is, these games were some of the most fun I had with my friends, just playing really like low-key, fun, low-stakes multiplayer games that were just honestly enjoyable at the time. Yeah, they're a little overdone now, but I have to at least give them their credit that they were really fun, and even though they're simplistic, it provided a lot of great memories. Starting at number 10, we have Star Wars Squadrons. Now, this is one of the few games that has finally made me use my PSVR, and I don't know if this is the standard of what VR games are looking like, but like, this was a phenomenal experience in VR. There's so much detail put into like the cockpit of the game. All the ships have their own unique design. All the sound design when you're playing in VR with the headset, everything is so well done, and it makes such an immersive experience. The combat in this game is really fun. There's a lot of layers of depth that you can go in with the customization, the different kind of levels, the different like ships you can do. And even though it's maybe a lot at first, you can kind of pick up on it quickly, but it's one of those where you definitely can improve a lot with more time played. On top of that, I mostly spent my time in single player, which I know is not what's really talked about in this game, but the single player is honestly really interesting. They have like a lot of variety of levels, pretty interesting narrative to go around with it. Okay, like voice acting and everything like that, but everything felt fresh, and it was maybe a solid 10-hour experience. Kind of had a bad ending, but regardless of that, that was still a lot of fun. And hopping into the multiplayer, which is the main selling point of this game, it's a lot of fun. The multiplayer is chaotic enough to kind of keep you on your toes, but organized in a way where it doesn't feel disjointed, and it doesn't feel like it's just kind of all over the place. You definitely have to work with your team. There's a good amount of teamwork with like picking your ship that you have to use and making sure you're supporting one another and making sure you're getting all the objectives or just attacking your enemy. And on top of that, like, I gotta give props to EA, because this is just... It's nice to see that there's a bunch of Star Wars games coming out and we have a good variety. Just getting a full, $40 release Starfighter kind of shooting game is really fun, and it's deep, and it's not for everyone, but there's so much like lore and praise given to Star Wars fans in it to appreciate that. Like, I really got to give it props. At number 9, we have Astros Playroom. Now, Astros Playroom was pre-installed in every PS5 game, and so to a lot of people, it just looked like a demo game, and in a lot of ways, that's what it is, but oh my goodness, dude, this game is the biggest shock for me probably of this year. It's such a fun and surprising game with so much creativity and personality. PlayStation legitimately made a really quality platformer with a lot of interesting mechanics, like all these different unique levels that are all playing praise to the legacy of PlayStation. As a huge like PlayStation fanboy, like I don't know, all the Easter eggs and all the games they threw in there, it really makes you emotional to kind of see like the legacy of all these games you've played, and to kind of recognize and calling out every single thing I see, and just like all the little Easter eggs and all the like hidden objectives that you found. Like, it's just so much fun. It's a lot of fan service, but the thing is, the controls are tight. They have a good use of the PlayStation 5 controller, and it does a great job of showing you all the different things you can do with it. It's extremely replayable, and Honestly, it's a good length. It's only maybe like 5 hours, but with the replayability, you can keep on going back and back to find all the little hidden secrets. And I was shocked to say that this honestly was one of the best games I played this year. At number 8, we have Spider-Man Miles Morales. Just starting off with the good of this game, the gameplay is so crisp. Spider-Man 2018 was a phenomenal game, and like, I think it was my favorite game of that year, even though it was the same year God of War came out. But regardless, this game adds so many additions to the gameplay with the Venom and camouflage powers that it's going to be hard to go back to standard Spider-Man. The controls are so seamless, the web swinging feels so tight, everything is just so well organized and put together and just feels like such a clean combat system. The visuals are amazing on the PS5, the music's just so good, I mean it really captures the essence of Miles Morales. On top of that, the side missions were really fun. A big issue with Spider-Man 2018 was that the side missions were very generic and bland, and they really stepped it up here with having interesting little stories or even like context to the little missions that you're doing or something unique to it to make it feel like you're not just running through the same kind of, plug and chug, like just beat these enemies and then run away. All that being said, I did have a few issues with this game. The story is a real big step down from 2018. It's just really predictable. The side characters are not great. Even Miles Morales is like interesting as a character, but he's not amazing in this game, and the villain is just really mediocre. On top of that, it's not like a full game. It took maybe 10 hours to beat the main story and then another like 5 or 6 to 100%. So with all that, it puts it down a little bit, but overall still a really fun, solid, exclusive, and also really awesome game to start the PlayStation 5 generation with. At number 7, we have Sackboy Big Adventure. Now, out of the PlayStation 5 kind of launch titles, this is probably the one that had the least kind of precedence and was probably talked about the least. But like, this game shocked me. It's been a while since I've played a Little Big Planet game, and I know they're amazing and I remember loving them, but it shocked me just how much personality and charm this game had. The levels are just so well designed. There's so much creativity put into them, whether it's just the visuals or the different gameplay mechanics. Like, there's so many different little tools to add to the platform. Either you get like a hover pack, or you can like stick to walls. You have like a grappling gun, or like you can a laser. There's so many different unique elements thrown into each level to keep everything super fresh. On top of that, the music in this game is really good. It puts you at such ease, and it's a good mix of like being fun and upbeat, but also putting at you like a really like nice, happy, relaxing feeling. Like, this is definitely a game you play to make yourself feel good. There's also a lot of fun collectibles in each level, which make it really replayable. The little story that they had was like interesting enough and had a lot of fun little side characters. You can get a bunch of different costumes to kind of customize Sackboy. And sadly, one of the most disappearing elements of games nowadays, this game had straight up couch co-op, and this is so much fun as a game to play with a friend. There's exclusive levels that are meant just for co-op, which just have so much like creativity and like a really good sense of teamwork, and it's fun even if you have a partner you don't get along with, because you're able to like fight each other and do all this stuff, and it forces you to have some kind of cohesion with the partner that you have in order to actually beat the levels. And even replaying the single player levels together just brings it into like a new fresh experience. At number 6, we have Doom Eternal. Now, I'll admit I've never played Doom 2016, and it was on my list, but when Doom Eternal came out, I just went ahead and grabbed it, and I'm glad I did. A lot of this might be brought over from Doom 2016, but the combat in this game is just so fast-paced and fluid. You have so many different kinds of weapons and so many different like tactics to approach each battle. It's really refreshing to play a shooter that isn't just run here, hide behind cover, and shoot a little bit. What makes you good at this game is that you're fast, you're dodging around, you're killing people, and you're getting health from them, and just doing all this crazy stuff, switching between different guns and all this stuff. There's a lot to praise here, and it's a really fun game, and just the gameplay loop of this game is just phenomenal. On top of that, it visually looks really good. The music is just, the music's so good. I mean, it's pure just straight metal for like hours at a time. It will definitely give you a headache after some point, but like the thing is, like, you want to listen more, and it makes everything just seem a little bit more like interesting and more exciting. There is a few weird platforming things they added to this game, and the story that they kind of put in doesn't matter very much, but I can appreciate what they were trying. And despite the creativity of a lot of the setting around you, it does feel like it can get repetitive at some times, and there's a few enemy designs that just feel a little cheap and don't like kind of ruin like the flow of the game, but that doesn't really bog it down too much just because of how fun the just general gameplay is in 90% of the game. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go back and play 2016 at some point, but I'm glad I played Doom Eternal. It's a great game, one of my favorites of this year. At number 5, we have the infamous Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I'm gonna rate this game from my experience with it. And I know from a critical level, if I was a reviewer at IGN or at like some game company and I have to look at this holistically and review it as a game for every platform, I know it would be lower. My personal experience, I got to play this on the PS5, which even though we don't have the full PS5 upgrade, it runs a lot better than it does on a base PS4. So from my experience, as someone who didn't really watch many trailers, but was still relatively excited, I got a game that had an amazing story, really interesting, diverse endings. Maybe the choices didn't matter as much as they should have, which I'll completely admit, but it didn't bother me enough. It made the journey different, maybe not the ending different. The voice acting is phenomenal. I mean, like all the characters are just so well acted, and the facial capture, the like little details in them, it's really well done. The music's phenomenal. I mean, there's such an array of music from, you know, like futuristic sounding to just like a mix of like EDM, rock, hip hop. It's just a lot of fun to listen to, and you can just drive around for hours just listening to the different music. The gameplay is really solid. It starts off kind of awkward. I really wasn't feeling it at first. The gunplay felt a little uncomfortable and the hacking seemed a little simple. But what the game does so well is that it builds up this experience as you play more. Building up different skill trees and getting new perks and everything really changed the gameplay amazingly. There's so many different interesting builds you can go, whether you're going with just guns blazing, you're going with blades, if you're going with just a stealth, if you're going with hacking. There's so many interesting ways, and every time I check online to see how other people approach different situations, there's so much replayability with this game that you can play in so many different styles that the whole experience could be extremely different from how you approach a combat. On top of that, just the visual design and style that they give the whole game, the characters, the aesthetics, and everything like that. You don't get much Cyberpunk kind of stuff, and seeing a really pretty well realized city, even though it's not flawless, it's really refreshing to see, and it feels very unique to what it is. But I do have to peg it down a little bit, because even though I was playing something that had a pretty relatively stable frame rate and didn't have too many issues, there still was quite a few bugs that were just flaws in the design of the game, not even the platform I was playing it on. I also did experience quite a bit of crashing. I know the PS5 is more stable than the PS4, but the crashing happened enough where it was annoying. And there's a few times where it does feel like there's missing content. Now, I'm not one who watched the trailers or analyzed it very much, but there's definitely a few parts in the game where I'm like, they kind of skip through that very quickly and it feels a little disjointed. But with that saying, like, I get the controversy of this game, but with the experience I played, I had a lot of fun. I have so many side missions to go back and do, and different endings to unlock, and different characters to meet and everything. It's a fun game, and I hope that in a couple months that this game is going to be phenomenal, because CD Projekt Red definitely deserves a lot of the hate that they're getting in terms of releasing a buggy mess, and releasing it on last-gen consoles that honestly couldn't handle it. They deserve all that blame. But the game's also getting a lot of unfair hate on just aspects of the game that were just never promised, or just like people were expecting higher than what it is, instead of looking at the actual solid content that we do have. At number 4, we also have another controversial game, Last of Us 2. Now, I've said this before in some other videos, but The Last of Us 2 is a good game, not an amazing game. And the problem with that is that the expectations were so high that it had to be an amazing game for people to accept it. In a weird way, I wish Last of Us 2 was never made, but I can't deny the amazing experience I had playing it. People hate on the story, and I don't agree with that at all. The hate on the story is not justified in my mind, and I know it's objective to say what you appreciate about a story or not, but from where I'm standing, it's really well written. I mean, the cycle of violence themes, the way that they have two separate narratives and build it up, it's not amazing from a pacing standpoint, but the thing is, they do really write this well. The characters are really interesting, and there's a lot of depth to them, even though, you know, there's obviously the Abby narrative where people don't like her as much of a character. I can't deny that she's well written. She's just not as charismatic as Ellie, and you haven't had a whole game before to play with. And if she wasn't such a villain aspect to the Ellie storyline, I think people would have appreciated her a lot more, but it just goes against the notion of what people expected, which is why I think it gets so much hate. And I don't want to get too started on the ending, but people really take that out of context for what it is and say that's the narrative twist there is something that it's not. What I will say though is the gameplay of Last of Us 2 is a bit flawed. It does feel a little archaic at times and doesn't feel like a big enough evolution from the first game. It is a lot of fun to sneak around, and you got really clean animations. The anime AI is pretty interesting, and it's pretty intense in a lot of situations, running in and out of combat and hiding and shooting. But the shooting mechanics are not amazing, and a lot of times it does feel repetitive. But yeah, I mean, overall the game is still a lot of fun. It is a really moving experience. It might be extremely bleak, but that doesn't bother me, and I don't think that's a objective kind of argument just to say a game's bleak. I mean, it's, maybe it's not your personal preference, that doesn't make it bad. Overall, really fun game. Maybe not the most phenomenal game that Last of Us 1 was, but I can't deny that it was one of my favorite experiences of this year. Number 3, we have the Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is the kind of RPG that I love just because it's such a cinematic game with so much interest, like such an interesting world, really well developed characters like Tifa, Cloud, Aerith, like they're all super unique. They have very well defined characteristics and personalities, and I love that. I know there's some issues with how the story ends, and without going too deep into it, I know I've been explaining kind of how it differs from what it's supposed to be, and I know it's a very Nomura thing to do, but I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan. I honestly, it sounds interesting to me, even though it's not exactly what a lot of fans had in mind. And on top of that, the gameplay in this game is so good. There's probably other systems that have this kind of mentality, but having a mix of turn-based with real-time action, it's so clean. There's so much strategy that goes into it, and it's so much fun to play. It really feels good that you can control a whole party of characters, and there's so many different ways you can approach combat and different builds and different attacks, and it's just a lot of fun. It works really well. It's super fluid, and it's probably, just in terms of sheer gameplay, some of my favorite of the year. The only flaws I can really say for this game is that the pacing really sucks at a lot of points. There's a lot of missions that just drag on way too far. There's just too much content in a weird way. I know they're trying to make this a big RPG to kind of fulfill itself as its own standalone thing, even though it only takes place in 20% of the original game story. And it definitely feels like a full experience from what I'm getting. It's not, I would never be mad about it being $60. If anything, I'm a little upset because they put too much and it felt like there's a lot of filler. At number 2, we have Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is such a surprising game to me because honestly, the gameplay trailers never gave it the justice it deserved. It looked really bland. The combat looked just like a mediocre Assassin's Creed, and the story didn't seem too intriguing. But what I got was such a fun experience with just such deep and very, very, very fluid action and combat. Now I'll admit, the stealth and everything in this game is not great, but the actual combat when you're just battling enemies is so fluid. I mean, you have all the different stances, you have a bunch of different weaponry, and the animations are so clean. I mean, when an enemy attacks you and you have to parry it, you want to dodge it, it's very clear what it should be, and there's a high margin of error, but the thing is that it always feels fair. On top of that, the story is a little predictable, but I will say that the themes that they implement in the story are really fucking well done and are really give you a lot to think about. Jin is not the most interesting character, but what he represents is extremely interesting. On top of that, the visual aesthetics in this game are so beautiful. I mean, this game is gorgeous because of its use of colors, its use of the environment to bring you around, to guide you, and the way that meshes with the world around you. And there's so much side content in this game, and the side content is honestly really fun, whether it just be finding new areas, it be doing little missions. The game is just overall just such a well-made game, and I love Sucker Punch as a studio. They're probably top 5 studios for me of all time, and I feel bad for doubting this game before it came out. At number 1, we have Hades. Now, I don't think this is a hot take anymore. Maybe a couple months back it was, but it seems like a lot of people giving this game the praise it deserves. And I'm so glad for that because this is a game I never would have played if it wasn't for all the great reviews. Roguelike kind of games and even just a lot of indies, if I'm being completely honest, I miss and I skip over just because I feel like it won't be my thing. But when I started this game and I got addicted to it and just kept on playing, and it shocked me just because of how much fun I was having. And when I look back, it's just the game I had the purest, the most fun with. And that's really what I have to put at the top of my list. The controls, the gameplay, it's so fun. All the build variety makes each run feel super like unique. And there's so many different ways you can build that you can replay the game so many times that it could feel fresh. The voice acting is phenomenal. I mean, I didn't expect to enjoy like a story that they had, but the characters really are what sell you on the story, and it's an intriguing enough narrative that you want to see where it goes. The visual style is phenomenal. I mean, it's a gorgeous game, and not in the same way that maybe Last of Us 2 is gorgeous, where it's like amazing facial capture and stuff like that and interactions with the environment. It's just the visual style is so unique and has so much personality that's amazing. And the character designs, the way they interpret like the Greek gods is just super well done. It's intriguing and it's really interesting to kind of meet them all. So yeah, just because Hades is so good from a gameplay, from a visual, from a music, from a replayability, from a story perspective, it really just is the best game to me this year. It doesn't have any glaring flaws to me, and I know some people might say it's a little repetitive and maybe not as deep as some other roguelikes, but maybe I'm not a big enough fan of that kind of gameplay, but it felt fresh to me, and I've enjoyed it for pretty much every minute I played it. Thanks so much for watching. These top 10 videos, they take a lot longer than they look. And I really appreciate your viewership, and subscribe if you're a homie. And yeah. And also, if you like games and gains, then check out my boy's channel, the Bantiro. Link in the description below. Thanks again for watching, guys. And see you guys next time with another top 10.